Hi, I'm Chris Grabenstein, author of about 76 different books. I think I do 100 school visits a year. But today, I'm about to do my most favorite school visit of them all at O'Hara Elementary here in Fox Chapel. My great niece, Abby, goes to school there. She's in the 2nd grade. And before we do the assembly, she's going to ask me a few questions.
Hey everybody, my name is Abby, and these are a few questions from my uncle and from Dr. Francis's class. How old were you when you wrote your first book?
I was an old man. I think I wrote my first book, let me see here, when I was 45 years old. Because I'd already had like almost a 20-year career in advertising. I'd done improvisational comedy, and I quit. I was an executive vice president, group creative director. I had a lot of initials after my name, but I just quit, and I went home and I started writing books, but it took 4 years for me to get published. So my first book came out the week of my 50th birthday.
What made you decide you wanted to write for children?
Oh, well, I first started writing for adults. I wrote murder mysteries for adults. And I have a lot of nieces and nephews from my own brothers, and through marriage, I think I had 24 nieces and nephews. And at the time, none of them were old enough to read my adult books. And they kept going, Uncle Chris, can we read your books? Can we read your books? I said, no, not until you're 25 or 30 years old, because there's some adult stuff that goes on in those books. And a publisher read one of my adult books and said, this ghost story would be great for kids if you got rid of all the adult language and situations and cut about 70,000 words out of the manuscript. And my agent said, do you want to do that? I said, yes, I've got 24 nieces and nephews who can't read anything. And so when I started writing that, when I was in school, I read a lot of Mad Magazine and I watched a lot of Rocky and Bullwinkle cartoons. And so I had more fun writing for kids. And once I wrote my first kids book, I said, I never want to go back to writing for adults, because adults never hug your books when they come to get them signed. Kids will sometimes hug your books.
How do you name your characters?
Oh, that's a very good question. The names for the characters come from a lot of different places. For instance, in my book, Escape from Mr. Lemoncello's Library, it was coming out in 2013, and I knew the main character, Clara Kelley, had to be 12 years old. So when was he born? 2001. So I did a Google search. I said, what were the most popular baby names for boys born in the year 2001? And Kyle was in the top 10. So in that book, all the librarians are named after librarians who helped me, including Dr. Zinchenko. There's actually a Dr. Yanina Zinchenko in Oak Ridge, Tennessee. And then sometimes we raise money for charities where we're auction off character naming rights. And every so often I'll go to a school and a kid will come up to me and say, my name's Billy Guilfoyle. Use it in a book sometime. And if you ever read my book, The Island of Dr. Libris, the main character's name is Billy Guilfoyle.
Wow.
Oh, and sometimes a character's named Abby. I don't know if you've noticed that or not. It happened a few years ago. Characters started being named Abby. I don't know why.
I think I know why. Are some of your stories based on real events in your life?
Yes, a lot of them do. I think that's what all writers are like Harriet the Spy. We're always like looking around, soaking things up. We're big sponges, so you remember a lot of stuff. Like, for instance, my first book for kids called The Crossroads, which is a ghost story. There is a bully who picks on my main character, and I based him on the bully who used to pick on me when I was in the 7th grade. And he used to pick on me every day after school. And I think he's a famous doctor now in the town where we all grew up. And I said, I want to let everyone know that even though he's a big doctor now, when he was a kid, he was nothing but a big bully. My main character, to defeat the bully, pulls down his pants and reveals that Bobby Younger, even though he's 14 years old, wears big boy diapers because Bobby Younger poops his pants. So like, they say revenge is a dish best served cold. And I sent that into Random House. They're my publishers. And I got a phone call from my mother. And she said, Chris, guess who I just talked to? I said, who? Mrs. Younger, remember her? Lived down the street, had that son named Bobby. She reads all your books. She reads them 2 or 3 times. So I called up Random House really quick. I said, you know that character, Bobby Younger? We got to change his name to Kyle Snurts, or an old lady in Tennessee is going to have a heart attack. So if you ever read The Crossroads and you come across Kyle Snurts, you know his real name is Bobby Younger.
Why did you write No More Naps?
Is that a question from your classroom?
Yeah.
What's your teacher's name again?
Dr. Francis.
Dr. Francis. Well, to whoever in Dr. Francis wanted to know about no more naps. I wrote that because my next door neighbors, I live in an apartment building in New York City, and one across the hall had a girl named Devin, and the one next door on this side had a girl named Annalise. And I would bring them picture books whenever I'd go to like a book convention or whatever, and I said, you know what? Devin and Annalise are such unusual names, they're not going to see their names in a book unless I write it. But I didn't have an idea for no more naps. And then one day, my wife JJ was out walking the dog, and there's a little park across the street from our apartment building, and there was a father there with a baby, and the baby was going, I don't want to take a nap, I don't want to take a nap. And my wife said, well, my dog Fred likes to take naps. If you don't want to have that nap, he'll take it for you. And there was an old man on a park bench who said, yeah, I'll take that nap. And so she came home and told me that story. I said, aha, I finally have the idea for the Annalise and Devin book. So that's why the main character's name is Annalise Devin McFleece. And the whole nap idea started from my wife goofing around with that father.
Which book are you most proud of?
Which book am I most proud of? Could be the one called Shine that I wrote with my wife JJ, because it's all about kindness and treating other people well. And we get a lot of emails from kids who say they read that book and they started taking better care of each other. So that one's kind of cool. And I'm also proud of most of my books are fast-paced page turners, because when I was your age and even a little older, I was what they called a reluctant reader. I did not like to read. I like to think I was a super critical reader. I just wanted to read things that got a movie started in my head. So I also get a lot of emails from kids who have struggled with reading or from their parents. And like they say, my son did not like to read at all until he picked up one of your books, or kids who have like sort of learning disabilities or problems can pick up my books and like them. So I'm pretty proud of that.
What makes a great story?
What makes a great story? Oh, that's a great question. Well done, Abby. A story is a great character transformation machine. You ever seen the movie Star Wars?
Not yet.
Not yet. Oh, you're too young for that. There's a character named Luke Skywalker in that, and he starts out like, oh, I'm just a farm boy on the planet Tatooine. I wish something adventurous would happen in my life. And then he gets summoned. There's this guy named Obi-Wan Kenobi, summons him forward, and he goes on all these adventures and stuff. And at the end of the movie, he is the savior. He saved the galaxy from the evil empire. So he went from being a farm boy and goes through all this transformation, this great kind of all these twists and turns, and he victories and defeats and comes out changed. So we like to read stories because we like to watch people go through things and come out changed, because then we hope, heck, I could do that too. I could change, I could grow. So that's why we like stories so much.
Who has helped you the most on your books?
My wife, JJ, has helped me the most on my books of anybody, because she has a really short attention span and gets bored very easily. So she reads everything. So I've had 76 books published right now. So she's read all of them. Like even the ones I write with James Patterson, she'll read what I'm going to send to James Patterson before he gets to see it. And she's really good at like saying, this part's boring. I know you spent a lot of time doing this research, but I don't care about it. Get rid of it. And so she's helped me more than anybody.
Who is your role model to be an author?
Probably James Patterson, because he was my first boss when I worked in advertising. And he quit advertising and became the best-selling author in the history of authors. So I said, there might be a connection between writing, because when we wrote commercials, we had to grab our viewers' attention in the first like 2 seconds, or they would zap us with their remote control. They go, pew, pew, I don't want to watch this. Or if they were listening to us on the radio, they'd push a button and go to the next commercial. So I figured there might be something with that attention grabbing that we had to learn to do advertising and writing page turners. So he was probably my inspiration to become a writer. A role model, maybe Stephen King, who's another great adult author who you shouldn't read till you're 35 years old. He's very scary, very scary.
Okay.
Yes.
It's good to know.
Yes.
If you're not an author, what job would you want?
Well, I tried to be an actor, and that you always have to go to auditions and get rejected for a long time. And I had a lot of fun doing commercials because we got to go film commercials all the time. So now if I had to have another job, I might be a teacher, but I do school visits like once a week, and I go home and I need a nap. So if I was a teacher, I would have to have a cot in my room so I could take naps.
Okay. Who was your favorite teacher?
One was Mrs. June P. Garrett, who, when I was in the 7th grade, she liked funny stuff. And I said, who says that essays have to be so dull and boring and serious all the time? So I always try to entertain Mrs. Garrett, and she liked it so much, she wrote in the margins of my papers, "You will make your living as a writer someday." So that was pretty important. And then there was another one in high school. I went to high school, and there was a guy named Shaq Van Duzen, who was the kind of English teacher who you never forget. When he introduced me to Mark Twain and Ernest Hemingway and William Shakespeare, he never gave out a detention because he had a wicked sharp wit, and he would just make fun of you if you misbehaved in his class. And so he was funny. And when there was a movie called Easy Rider came out, which was about people riding motorcycles across country, and we were reading Huckleberry Finn, he said, "Let's go watch Easy Rider." So we all went on a field trip to go see Easy Rider. And he was also the drama club director, so he helped me in plays and stuff. And my father wanted me to play football when I was a kid. And guess who was the worst football player ever?
You.
I was terrible. But what was cool is Coach Van Duzen was one of the football coaches, but he was also the drama club faculty advisor. So one day I was trying so hard to make my dad happy. I was out there playing, I was blocking. They had these things where you block the sled and you push it back, and you're supposed to push it back. I would hit it and bounce off and fall on the ground. And I always remember Shaq Van Duzen was up on this blocking sled, and he said, "Grabenstein!" I said, "Yes, Coach." "What are you doing out here? We need you inside at play practice." So in front of everybody, he said, being in a play is just as cool as being on football. So guess who never played football again?
You.
Me.
When you were little, what did you want to be?
I think I wanted to be a movie star. A noble ambition, as it were. And I think for a while I wanted to be a doctor, but guess what? 3 of my brothers became doctors, so I didn't want to do that anymore. And then by the time I was 10, I think I wanted to be a writer.
Do you like dogs or cats better?
Oh, well, if my cats are watching right now, we have 2 cats, so I love cats most. I like dogs too. Unfortunately, we don't have a dog right now. Our dog Fred went to heaven, but it's fun because the book Dog Squad, where I think there's a character named Abby in that book. And Dog Squad is kind of based on our late dog's life, because our dog Fred was a stray running around in New York City, and he was put into an animal shelter, which could have been a kill shelter, which meant if no one adopted him, he wasn't getting out of there. But they were going to do a Broadway production of a show called Chitty Chitty Bang Bang. And there's a song in that show called Toot Sweet, all about the candy you whistle and the whistle you eat. And there's a big gag at the end. The producers wanted them all to blow on their candy whistles, and they wouldn't make a sound that anybody in the audience could hear, but 7 dogs would come running on stage. So Bill Berloni, who's trained every dog on Broadway since the first production of Annie, did the Bulldog and the Chihuahuas in Legally Blonde. He was hired to do the dog act in Chitty Chitty Bang Bang, and he had 5 dogs, but he needed 2 more. So as a publicity stunt, they had a big open audition where all the animal shelters in New York City could bring their best dogs and audition, and Fred was there, and Fred got the part. So my late dog was a Broadway star.
What's your favorite city?
I think it's New York still. New York is like living on a college campus, because anything you want you can get to, and you can get on the subway, and you can go for where I live to a place called Coney Island in Brooklyn, and it's like Russia. There's all these Russian emigres there, so you go there. We went to see a bear circus, a Russian bear circus in Coney Island once, and it was like, oh, we're in a whole nother country. The women were like pushing me, get out of my way, like, oh, we're in Russia all of a sudden. So that was kind of cool, and you can walk around the block, and as a writer, New York is great, because if I need a character, I just walk around the block and I'll see 5 of them.
What is your favorite place to go to or favorite thing to do in New York City?
Oh, my favorite place to go in New York City is probably Central Park. I go there every single day because as a writer, you need to take a lot of walks. That's where you get your ideas when you're out walking and just daydreaming. So I go to Central Park, and I do like going to see Broadway shows, but it gets a little pricey. Have you ever seen Hamilton?
Yes.
Oh, yeah, that was one of my favorite shows to see on Broadway. Hamilton was great. Broadway and the park are my favorite places. Oh, and Motorino Pizza. They make pizza in a brick oven with wood. I don't know if you like that kind of pizza or not.
I like that kind of pizza. I like any pizza.
Yeah, very well. Come to New York. We have lots of it.
Thank you, Uncle Chris, for helping me out with my interview.
It was my pleasure. You had a lot of good questions there. That's good.
Thank you.